This is Radio Japan, NHK World Network Tokyo. It's 9 hours Japan time, midnight UTC. I'm Takahito Kobayashi with the news. In the headlines, Chinese President Jiang Zemin will arrive in Tokyo on Wednesday for a 7-day state visit. Senior G7 officials have begun informal discussions on a possible revision of the international foreign exchange system. And Prime Minister Takahito will express his firm determination to achieve an economic recovery and concern over North Korea's suspected nuclear development in his upcoming policy speech to Parliament. Now the main news in detail. Chinese President Jiang Zemin will arrive in Tokyo on Wednesday for a 7-day state visit. Mr. Jiang will be the first Chinese president to visit Japan. His visit will commemorate the 20th anniversary of the conclusion of a peace treaty between the two countries. Mr. Jiang will have talks with Prime Minister Takahito and have separate meetings with the emperor and business leaders. He will also visit the city of Sapporo and Sendai in northern Japan. On Thursday, Mr. Jiang and Mr. Obuchi will discuss Taiwan, Japan's past wartime conduct in China, the Asian economic crisis, and North Korea's suspected nuclear development. They will also discuss ways to strengthen relations between the two countries for the 21st century. Following their talks, the two leaders are to issue a joint declaration which will deal with Japan's wartime conduct in China and the issue of Taiwan. Earlier on Tuesday, the foreign ministers of Japan and China have agreed that the Prime Minister Takahito will offer a verbal apology for Japan's past aggression to Chinese President Jiang Zemin at the summit meeting. On the eve of Mr. Jiang's visit to Japan on Tuesday, Mr. Masahiko Komura held talks with Chinese Foreign Minister Tang Jiashuan to finalize a joint declaration to be issued by Mr. Obuchi and Mr. Jiang on Thursday. The statement will call for a new partnership towards the 21st century. Over the Taiwan issue, Mr. Komura and Mr. Tang agreed that Japan will respect the 1972 joint communiqué, which states that Japan understands and respects China's position that Taiwan is an inseparable part of China. Regarding the history of Japan's aggression in China during World War II, China had been demanding that Japan include an apology in the joint statement. During Tuesday's meeting, the two foreign ministers agreed that the statement will include an expression of Japan's deep remorse for its past aggression. They also agreed that Mr. Obuchi will make a verbal apology to Mr. Jiang. NHK has learned that the senior G7 officials have begun informal discussions on a possible revision of the international foreign exchange system. Sources say that the deputy finance ministers of the 7 leading industrialized nations met in Washington last weekend. The participants reportedly discussed the foreign exchange system, hedge funds, and other items that were on the agenda at last month's meeting of G7 finance ministers. Some industrialized countries, including Japan, have called for a drastic revision of the foreign exchange system, citing the Asian financial crisis and the turmoil in international markets. Germany has informally proposed the setting of a target zone for the exchange rate movements of several key currencies. Germany is said to be worried about the possible negative effects on its economy when the euro is launched in January, replacing Europe's strongest currency, the German mark. The sources added that the possible revision of the foreign exchange system may be one of the key issues on the agenda for next year's G8 summit meeting, which will be hosted by Germany. Prime Minister Keizo Obuchi will express his firm determination to achieve an economic recovery and concern over North Korea's suspected nuclear development in his upcoming policy speech to Parliament. Mr. Obuchi will give the speech at the start of the extraordinary session of Parliament on Friday. The Cabinet will officially approve the contents of the speech at the meeting on Wednesday. Mr. Obuchi will promise to implement economic stimulus measures worth 24 trillion yen, or about $200 billion, as quickly as possible, to try to get the Japanese economy out of the current spiral of economic recession and achieve positive growth in fiscal 1999. Mr. Obuchi will also say that Japan will increase its cooperation with South Korea and the United States in dealing with North Korea, which has raised concerns in Japan because of its test of missile launch in August and recent reports of a secret nuclear facility. Now, here is a frequency notice. You are listening to Radio Japan, broadcasting on 11.705 megahertz, being relayed to eastern part of North America via Sackville, Canada. This transmission is also relayed to Europe via Scotland, England, on 6.155 and 6.180 megahertz, and to Central Africa via Ascension Island in the Atlantic on 9.665 megahertz. Listeners in Asia can also hear this transmission until 0:15 hours UTC on 11.815 and 13.650 megahertz. Now, other news. 15 of Japan's 18 leading banks will apply for 5.7 trillion yen, or about $47 billion of public funds to strengthen their capital bases. Most of the funds will be used to dispose of bad loans in the current business year, which ends in March. A bank recapitalization law was enacted last month to shore up the capital bases of financial institutions. Tokyo Mitsubishi Bank and Nippon Trust and Banking say they will not apply for public funds. The Nippon Trust Bank has still not announced whether it will apply for the funds. The total of $47 billion is more than 3 times larger than the amount some Japanese banks received last March under a tentative law. Japan's leading banks have already announced their results for the first half of the business year. They plan to write off the equivalent of about $65 billion of bad loans by the end of March. 13 banks, including Nippon Trust Bank, are predicting losses for the business year that ends in March. The Long-Term Credit Bank of Japan says it had a deficit of 680 billion yen, or about $5.7 billion, before it was nationalized in October. The bank's new vice president, Hidebumi Mori, said his bank was 680 billion yen in the red on September 30th. Mr. Mori said the bank had to dispose of about $6.2 billion of bad loans extended by an LTCB subsidiary, Japan Leasing Corporation, which filed for court protection in September. Mr. Mori said the LTCB has no problems with the cash flow because of a large amount of loans from the state-run deposit insurance system. He added that the bank will continue to collect funds by issuing new one-year debentures. Japan's car makers are predicting a drop in production at their domestic plants for the first time in 3 years. 11 car manufacturers say their combined production this fiscal year will decline by 4% from last year to 10.3 million units. The automakers are expecting a 4% increase in production between October and March, but say this will not be enough to cover the 12% loss recorded in the 6 months until September. The heavy drop in production was caused by a slump in domestic sales and exports to the rest of Asia. Japan's automakers say that the production over the next 4 months could fall below the 10 million level for the first time in 20 years. Prime Minister Keizo Obuchi and incoming Okinawa Governor Keiichi Inamine have confirmed that they will work in close contact in the construction of a heliport to replace the one at the U.S. Futema Air Station. In a meeting in Tokyo on Tuesday, Mr. Inamine said, "The people of Okinawa want peace and the reduction and consolidation of U.S. bases in the prefecture." He said he will fully study his election pledge that the joint military and commercial airport be built in northern Okinawa. Construction of a new heliport is one condition for the return of the site of the U.S. Air Base to Japan. But the government's plan to build an offshore heliport has been deadlocked. Mr. Obuchi said he hopes Mr. Inamine will consult the will of the people and deal with the matter for the future of Okinawa. Mr. Obuchi indicated the government is planning to resume meetings of a joint council aimed at stimulating Okinawa's economy as soon as Mr. Inamine takes office on December 10th. The Japanese government will provide financial aid and emergency supplies for relief efforts in Yunnan province, southern China, which was hit by a series of earthquakes last Thursday. The earthquakes injured about 1,400 people and destroyed more than 17,000 houses. In response to China's request, the government has decided to offer $200,000 and emergency supplies, such as tents and blankets, worth 18 million yen, or about $150,000 US. 5 Japanese airlines will intensify inspections of their older Boeing jumbo jets after a crack was found in a Japan Airlines plane. The 5 Japanese airlines will follow the recommendation of the U.S. manufacturer of the 747 jets and increase regular inspections of 26 planes that have completed more than 20,000 flights. The airlines, including JAL and All Nippon Airways, will shorten the interval between inspections from 7,000 flights to 1,500. Boeing's recommendation came after engineers found a crack in the JAL 747 jet during a regular maintenance check in June. The 19-centimeter crack was located at the rear of the plane and the pressure bulkhead, which is designed to maintain normal air pressure in the passenger cabin. A similar crack is thought to have caused the JAL plane crash in 1985 that claimed 520 lives in Japan. Finally, let's take a look at the top stories at this hour. Chinese President Jiang Zemin will arrive in Tokyo on Wednesday for a 7-day state visit. Senior G7 officials have begun informal discussions on a possible revision of the international foreign exchange system. And Prime Minister Keizo Obuchi will express his firm determination to achieve an economic recovery and concern over North Korea's suspected nuclear development in his upcoming policy speech to Parliament. And that's the news from Radio Japan. I'm Takahito Kobayashi. Next follows Radio Japan 44 Minutes. Please stay tuned.